Councillor Cumbers, I can confirm that we are live streaming to YouTube now, and we've got about 30 seconds to go until 6:30.
Right, thank you. Oh, that's a welcome addition. Hello, Rebecca.
Hi Pat, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, and hope you're well.
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thanks.
Will we be seeing baby tonight?
Yeah, potentially. She's just having a shower at the minute.
Oh, by herself?
No, with my partner.
Oh, we can hear her.
Yeah.
So are we ready to start then?
Yes, it's now 6:30.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, welcome to this meeting of the Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Pat Cumbers and I chair the committee. I confirm that the following members are present and participating in this remote meeting. Councillor Rob Bindloss, Councillor Ronan Brown, Councillor Robert Child, Councillor Jean Douglas, Councillor Chris Fisher, Councillor Elaine Holmes, Councillor Rebecca Smith, and Councillor Jacob Wilkinson. For those who don't know, Chris Evans has resigned from this committee, and I'll let you know as soon as we hear who his replacement will be. Do we have any other councillors in attendance?
No, not at the moment. There's no other councillors viewing.
Right, and Alan's not here yet. Councillor Pearson's not here yet. Still not here?
No, not in attendance yet.
No, so we hope that he will arrive at some time. Is Inspector Danvers here? No, again, we expect her to arrive at some time. And we also have officers from the Democratic Services team led by Manager Natasha Taylor. Elaine, did you want to say something? Your hand is up. Jacob, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to confirm that I heard you right. You said that the Leader of the Opposition has withdrawn from the Scrutiny Committee.
You're right. Yes, he has.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
I tried to get unmuted, Madam Chairman, and I couldn't. The reason why nobody has taken his place, because obviously we can't until a full council meeting, can we? So that is the reason why. I don't know quite why somebody wouldn't let me be unmuted, but I was trying to unmute myself, but it was impossible. So until there's a full council meeting, we obviously that is procedure. It always has been procedure. Whether it's altered now, I don't know. But so that's what we were doing. Thank you.
Yeah, Natasha, can you confirm that? Because I thought it just needed them to make up their minds.
That's correct. So the seat is allocated as a seat for the opposition group, and the group leader can nominate members from their group to sit in that seat. So it doesn't have to wait for full council. Fine.
So hopefully we'll see somebody.
So is that new? Is that new? Because that is what used to always happen before. If you changed from a committee, then you had to wait to a full council meeting to verify it. Yeah, else we would have done it by now.
Councillor Holmes, I think that might have been the case in the old committee system, but actually the case now is that as the seat is an opposition group seat, council have already confirmed that, so the group leader can nominate somebody to go from his group to sit in that seat, and I have confirmed that as well. But happy to have another conversation with Councillor Evans if that needs clarifying.
Well, it does, because it definitely does. Yeah. And the other thing was that the person who is going to take over is at his father's funeral today, so wouldn't be able to come anyway.
Yeah. We're sorry to hear that then.
And I can't put my hand down either. Lower hand. Now it's lowered. Yeah.
Right. Do we have any external participants? We don't, do we? No. This meeting is being held in public, and we welcome those members of the public who have joined us. Any member participating by remote link who declares an interest in any item of business in terms which require them to leave the room must ensure that they cannot be seen or heard during the agenda item. This shall be confirmed by Democratic Services. The member of staff will also confirm to the remote member when they may rejoin the meeting. Should any aspect of the conference link fail during the meeting, I will call a short adjournment of up to 5 minutes to determine whether the link can quickly be re-established. If the link cannot be re-established, the meeting shall be adjourned to a later date. In the event of link failure for individual members, the remote member or members will be deemed to have left the meeting at the point of failure of the equipment. And if the link cannot be re-established before the end of the meeting, then the presumption will be that the meeting should continue to deal with the item, providing the meeting remains quorate. Should the meeting no longer be quorate, the meeting shall be adjourned and any remaining items of business will be deferred. If the individual member's link is successfully re-established, then the remote member or members will be deemed to have returned at the point of re-establishment. I would ask members to indicate their wish to speak by raising their hand using the raise hand tool on Zoom. I will then invite each member in turn to make their contribution to the debate. Before proceeding to any vote, I will ensure that all members and officers have no further comments by confirming with the technical host that no hands are raised. I will ask each member to indicate when asked whether they are voting for, against, or abstaining. And this will be recorded by the Democratic Services Officer, who will confirm the outcome of the vote. Any member who has been absent from the debate on a particular item due to link failure must abstain from that vote on that item. So now we go on to agenda. Apologies for absent. We were thinking perhaps it would be Rebecca, but it's not. It's lovely to see Rebecca. Any other apologies? I think we're all here, aren't we?
Councillor Cumbers, can I just confirm that we have got Inspector Danvers, she has joined us, but unfortunately she can only join by phone, so we won't be able to see her, but when we get to that item, we will be able to hear her.
Oh, that's lovely. Oh, well, welcome then to Inspector Danvers. It's almost a year to the day that we last saw Inspector Danvers, or I last saw her. And of course, it was at Parkside. That feels now like a million years away, doesn't it? So we come now to the minutes, and you all hopefully have received revised minutes of the meeting on the 25th of, on the meeting on 11th of February. Yeah, I presume you've all read them. Could somebody propose and somebody second?
I'll propose them, Chair.
Thank you very much. Rob, is there a seconder? Thank you, Jacob. So, yeah, so no comments about the minutes? Nothing wrong with the minutes? In which case, then can we go to the vote, please, Natasha? Oh, Rebecca, of course, wasn't here, but the others all indicate.
Do you want me to go through the list of names, Councillor Cumbers?
Perhaps that's better to make sure.
That's fine. Okay. Councillor Bindloss.
For.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Child.
For.
Councillor Cumbers.
For.
Councillor Douglas.
For.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Holmes.
For.
Councillor Smith.
Abstain.
Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
That's 8 for and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much. Those minutes are approved. Thank you. Now I come to agenda item 3, declarations of interest. And anybody who wishes to make a declaration of interest in respect of items on the agenda, if they would do so, please.
Got Councillor Brown with his hand raised.
Yeah, Councillor Brown.
I'll declare a personal non-pecuniary interest in items 4 and 5 due to the fact that my wife works for Melton Broadcasting and the community safety team.
Right, thank you. And that's been noted. Right, we go on to the agenda item 4, the Community Safety Partnership Strategic Plan. If I could invite Andrew Cotton and Albert Wilson to provide a brief introduction to this. Is that Andrew going to do it? Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Cumbers. Yeah,
Yeah.
happy just to make a few comments before passing over to my colleague Albert. So the report for committee's consideration this evening obviously lays out the Community Safety Partnership Strategic Plan. It is a requirement on Melton as a local authority to have in place a Community Safety Strategic Plan. That was the Crime and Disorder Act from years ago, and obviously the plan fulfills that duty. The safety strategy covers the next 3 years. In common with every strategy, it sets out the current position, sets out the ideal sort of future position, and talks about the activities that need to take place to get us from point A to point B. There's clearly a very strong link with the plan in terms of the corporate priorities, of course, around excellent services, but also being connected to and led by our communities. So just following that brief overview, I'll just hand over to Albert to cover a little bit more of the detail for the committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Albert.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Andrew. Yes, as Andrew said out there, the document, the draft strategic plan is a statutory obligation. But it's a statutory obligation to have a strategic plan and to refresh it every 3 to 4 years. And it also comes with a supporting annual action plan as well, which sets out the actions and objectives of the partnership on an annual basis. That will be put together and determined by the Community Safety Partnership following formal approval of the strategic plan by Council in March. So the document itself is a fairly broad and high-level strategy that sets out the way the strategic partnership and its incorporated entities will work together to address problems regarding community safety, those identified by individual services and also by the community and individuals within that community over a prolonged period of time. The document itself has been underpinned by consultation. So around a year ago, slightly before the first lockdown, we undertook a public and stakeholder consultation, which involved both a survey and face-to-face discussions and interviews with individuals and on locations across the borough, and also 2 workshops that we held as a community safety partnership, bringing together agencies from across the public sector and also third voluntary sector as well to gain a real insight into the priorities and how best to address those priorities over the coming years. So the document seeks a bit of a step change in the way we engage with our communities on a whole, very much in line with the corporate priorities here at the council, but also in line with those objectives of partner agencies as well. Specifically around locality-based working, the way we use community centres and the way we spend time in those communities to understand what the real needs are. Identifying local assets to use, so that's both buildings and also people who can people and groups within each community to be able to help us deliver on those objectives as well. And to also engage with local businesses and voluntary organisations to to help achieve a safer community across Melton. So the goal is to really understand our communities and well, to listen to them and really understand what matters to them. We so often as public sector organisations contextualise an issue based on what we think people want or want from us as a partnership. Or actually the community tends to base what they want or what they say they want depending on who they're talking to at the time. So for example, if we as a council go into a community normally and say, what are the issues, then they will come up with bins need an issue with the bins, or an issue with street lighting. If the police go along, then they're potentially focus on crime and antisocial behaviour. And I think what we need to do, and what this document really seeks to set out, is a way of getting under the skin of that, really, and spending time within communities to understand what really makes them tick and what issues are really affecting them on a day-to-day basis. We're also seeking to work, obviously, with partner agencies to deliver those services in a different way as well, using a narrative-based approach, which is very much the way that our chair, Councillor Pearson, wishes to go, and something that is certainly backed up by really understanding people's issues and the community's issues. But also we're conscious of the priorities identified through that consultation as well. So the consultation showed that drug-related crime is a key aspect, road safety, violent crime, cybercrime, and also the way we communicate as a partnership and as individual organisations with the community to get their views on what we should be doing, but also giving feedback on what we have done, what's worked well, what hasn't worked so well, having an honest and open conversation with those communities to understand the way forward. So ultimately, the outcomes, I think, from the strategy, and as I say, that will take a number of years to realise, but we're certainly making good strides currently moving towards this, is a move to that sort of localised engagement, using community centres, focusing on priority neighbourhoods, however, having a broader aspect and focus on the wider community as well. Improve communication with our communities as well, allowing them to easily access and interact with our services. Focusing on the real headline items, violence, drug use, rural crime and cybercrime, the real headlines that in the presentation going up will go into in far more detail. Trying to facilitate community-led change as well. This shouldn't be communities feeling done to. This is it's about communities understanding their own strengths, their own weaknesses, and building on those strengths to facilitate real change. And also taking a holistic approach to case management as well, not just dealing with the presenting demand, not just saying, okay, well, we have a problem with shoplifting, let's target hard in all shops. I mean, that may well be something that we look to do, but also let's understand who's undertaking that shoplifting. Why are they doing that? Let's understand them as people and try to influence them, change their activities as a result. So it also seeks to build greater integration between the partner agencies within the CSP as well. We have very engaged partners. We meet on a quarterly basis at the moment, but I think there are opportunities, and everyone around the table at recent meetings has acknowledged there are opportunities to have far greater partnership working around certain priorities, and this seeks to put the building blocks in place to do that. So the next step, effectively, is to it's had approval, initial approval from the cabinet. Obviously, it'd be really helpful to get some feedback from Scrutiny and members from Scrutiny today or going forward regarding this document as well, in order for it to go to full council in March for hopefully for ultimate approval. So that's it in a nutshell. Happy to take questions or however. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks ever so much, Albert. That's very helpful. Yeah, we are here to make comments, to provide feedback, and to ask questions. So first it's Jacob and sorry, Councillor Wilkinson, and then Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a really good document. It's very broad stroked. I think as the Councillor for Sizenby, I cover Fairmead, things like drug-related crime is a big issue in an area that probably has one of the most deprived areas in town, has really poor outcomes across the board for residents. And as I say, it's very broad stroke, but I just kind of wanted to see what kind of meat there was to the bones of this document about what the plan is. It says about significant partnership resource directed towards preventing and policing drug-related crime. With that, the root cause of that is significant. It's positive, it's poverty, it's poor outcomes. What kind of meat to the bones you're going to be doing to deal with those problems before they escalate into other issues and things like that? I think one of the other priorities is that might not be on here in too much detail is the effect that lockdown has had on the community in terms of mental health provision, etc. I know that has been an issue and it has been highlighted. Kind of what are we doing to support vulnerable people who have developed mental health issues and who feel very, very isolated over the last 12 months? And how are you accessing and communicating with those people and kind of making sure that they're still on the right track? It's kind of those kind of issues that are quite key to me.
Thanks, Jacob. Yeah, Albert, vulnerable people, how are we protecting them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, regarding the Fairmead, location, that has absolutely been identified as a priority neighbourhood and something that we are committed to spending time within the community of Fairmead. We've already scoped out the potential for using the Fairmead Community Centre to deliver joined up services from there, whether that's the case management in terms of being able to assist people on a one-to-one basis. We've recently taken on a neighbourhood support officer who's going to be working predominantly out of there once lockdown lifts, and working alongside housing officers as well, and the various mechanisms that we have in place at the moment, certainly regarding for Fairmead, the new tenancy agreement being one of them, will actually allow us to take far more action, even from a council perspective, on these areas, on individuals within those areas who are causing issues at the moment. We'll get into it in the presentation slightly later, but certainly from the perspective of drug-related crime, the police have been doing a huge amount of work in terms of targeting that as a key priority over the last year, which has in part seen an increase in the overall numbers. And Audrey will, Inspector Danvers will go through that in slightly more detail. In relation to the second question, I think that's absolutely right, Councillor, that around the secondary impacts of COVID and the lockdown, the impact of mental health. We have, as a council, already begun working with people slightly differently, certainly from a case management perspective, to provide greater resilience within communities, to work with them on people on health and well-being, on fitness programs delivered on Zoom and otherwise over the lockdown period. I think the networks that we've built up through the community hub and the knowledge that we now have on our vulnerable people has improved significantly over the last year, which will allow us to be able to target support more effectively going forward, and pulling on community resource as well. And yeah, I was only at a meeting a couple of weeks ago with local health leads as well from across the county, engaging with the NHS and local health delivery sectors to be able to understand people's issues more effectively. We've also engaged with local community groups, Facebook groups, which have sort of popped up on Facebook recently and on other social media networks to with to be able to assist people with that low level mental health issues as well. And I think that it's far from a complete picture at the moment, but we're certainly in the phase of understanding the problem more, and lining ourselves up to be able to deliver effective services to people who are most in need of them.
Thank you. Are you okay with that, Jacob?
Yeah, that's great. I'll probably have some more questions with the crime and disorder presentation about drug-related crime thing later. But yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Thanks. We've got Councillor Brown, then Councillor Bindloss, and then Councillor Douglas. Ronan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Albert, just looking at obviously we're a very rural borough, but the half the population live in the rural areas. But I do obviously see the various briefings in the police, etc., and what's in the press. And obviously we've had a lot of rural crime across the borough, particularly when rural crime happens. It's usually high value items, farm machinery, break-ins, cricket clubs, stuff like that that's taken away, generators, etc., and in housing, etc. Distraction. We've got quite an elderly, more spread out, less densely populated, so distraction burglaries occur, etc. So I'm sort of looking at and maybe we'll come on to it later, but a reason why maybe that doesn't take as much prevalence in the key reasons for recommendations than it may have done previously. Just get a bit of an understanding of that.
Yeah, I think it's a valid point, and certainly the priorities that are set out in the strategy don't reflect the only activity that the partnership will be undertaking. If there are significant issues, if there are issues that are affecting the community beyond those initial priorities, then we'll certainly seek to do that. I mean, I know as a partnership we have been focusing, we have been addressing issues certainly regarding rural crime recently. Certainly the theft of lead from church roofs, that's been a predominantly rural issue that we have. That we've put actions in place to address. I know the police have been doing increased patrols certainly within rural areas to assist with the sort of prevention of that, and certainly around target hardening as well, and trying to prevent, trying to allow people to put measures in place that will dissuade that type of crime from happening. But it's certainly not it's just because it's not listed as rural crimes, not listed as one of the key priorities in that sort of terminology. I think the issues that have been addressed as priorities are also prevalent in the more rural areas. Certainly from the perspective of road safety, very much a rural crime issue to an extent, that we're also putting a lot of resource into at the moment, and that's a key priority. And plus the other elements of drug-related crime, violent crime, there certainly aren't only issues that are present in the town. But I think that's a valid point, Councillor, and certainly we will seek to be flexible enough to be able to address these issues as and when they arise, as opposed to just being focused only on those five key areas.
Thank you. Are you okay with that, Ronan?
Yes, Chair, that's fine. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Bindloss, Rob, please.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Albert. Yeah, just really to say, I like the paper. I think it's good. I think it reads well. I think there's a lot of information in there. I like it. That on page 11, 5.1, says the strategic plan seeks to reset the relationship. It kind of reset gives the impression that the last one failed or broke down or perhaps just fizzled out due to COVID. I just wondered what the issue was there, if indeed there was an issue. And my second point really, same page, 5.4, voluntary organisations, creating environment, goes to strong engagement. I would ask, and I'm sure that you've already thought of this, Albert, that we have a multi-level approach we have lots of obviously of different ages, and the perceptions from within those different ages, obviously, of what's an issue and what isn't an issue, varies greatly. So I think it's really important that when we look at this and we've ascertained where we're going to speak to people, how we're going to speak to them, that we do it, as I say, on a multi-level thing, because otherwise we'll miss age groups out or groups of need out. Thank you.
I absolutely agree with you, Councillor. I think just in relation to your first point regarding resetting the relationship, I think that was sort of a broad point regarding the way communities and the public and agencies within the public sector have diverged over a period of time. I think it's not in response to a specific issue that's happened in Melton. I think broadly, public sector seems to have withdrawn from communities, and we can see that to an extent in Melton, that we used to have services delivered from community centres as a borough council, whereas we don't have that at the moment, and so we're broadly seeking to. I think the point was around just reconnecting with those communities who potentially feel as though we as a partnership and a collective of agencies have withdrawn from their locality more than anything else. I think it's certainly not a reflection on the work that each individual service area is doing. I think it's just about how we're seen to be doing that.
I mean, sometimes these things just have a habit of kind of dwindling down, and then nobody comes to these. I think at this particular moment in time, we're in a position where we can use a fresh approach to this. As COVID starts to decline, and we start to look at and asking people lots of different things and different groups, I think we're in a special kind of unique position to be able to do these kind of things. And I'm pleased that we're taking this on board. Thanks.
Did you want to say anything else, Albert?
Just in relation to the second point, Councillor, around engaging with a broad sort of section of society, absolutely, I agree with that. We've already been doing work in schools. The violence reduction network that we'll touch on later is focusing on young people under 25, and certainly it won't be a case of us only speaking with a certain section of society or certain demographic in order to be able to understand issues. That's I agree that is a risk we run, and we've got to be very mindful of having that broad church that we're taking from.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Douglas, Jeannie, and then it'll be Councillor Child.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Pat. Yes, like Ronan, I wanted to raise the profile of concerns about rural crime, which I actually understand is on the increase. Ronan's already mentioned many points that I was going to raise, and they have been answered, such as the high cost of thefts, amounts to thousands and thousands of pounds, terrible crimes about animals as well, which really upsets the public. But actually, I'd like to add a point about the improved communications. On page 12 at 510, there's some details about the partnership recognising the need to engage with communities and stakeholders. I'm just wondering, are we liaising with the villages, the councils, the parish councils out there? I mean, I know when they meet, they come up with lots of ideas, lot of knowledge about crimes mentioned at such meetings, and also a lot of ideas about how to approach such crime as well. So, how are we as a Melton Borough Town Council actually working with the parish councils to raise our awareness of the crime and working with them? Thank you.
Yeah, I think again a very pertinent point. I think and we as a partnership do engage with parish councils, but certainly I think we could be better at that. Certainly the police have regular discussions with a number of parish councils regarding priorities in their area, and I think it's about us again trying to reset a relationship to a certain extent, and spending more time. That the parish councils are absolutely valid stakeholders in this, and will be able to give us targeted information and intelligence on what's happening in their community. I think that's absolutely something that we need to build on, Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Albert. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. So you're okay with that, Jeannie?
Yes, that's good. Yes, thank you.
It's Councillor Child and then Councillor Holmes. Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, yes, Albert. I'm not aware that the two parish councils in my ward, that's Burton and Dolby and Gadsby, have had any communication with the Borough Council. We've had to sort of go it alone, particularly on the B6047, which runs through Great Dolby and Twyford and Thorpe Satchel on the way to Market Harborough. We've had this issue, particularly in the warmer weather, of speeding bikes and the noise that they create as they come towards the village and when they leave. Now, I understand there's very little that the police can do, but I think a better liaison with the parishes in my patch would be very welcome. We have had the communications from the police and they've been very active on this, but I think we can step up on this, and particularly with hopefully the warmer weather on the horizon. Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
Again, echo that point. I think that I would welcome that engagement with the parish councils. I'm trying to do so on a number of issues at the moment with parish councils across the borough. I'm more than happy to extend that invitation out to all parish councils to be able to feed into the way the CSP operates and our priorities going forward. I think with regard to speeding, that we've recently undertaken addressed a couple of issues within the CSP at our quarterly meetings that are focused on speeding bikes through rural villages, and it's something that I know that the police have had significant resource in place for monitoring that speeding, and also we're in liaison with Leicestershire County Council and their highways team on what more we can do. I think also that often the answers may well be found within the community as well, regarding speeding and conveying that message of the impact of speeding through their community. What impact does that have? And we need to get better as a better partnership, but also wider as organisations to be able to convey that message in terms of dissuading people from speeding. But regarding the overall point, absolutely agree that's more than happy to encourage the partnership to engage far closer with parish councils.
Could I suggest that when we get back to face, Albert, that we have a forum where all parish councils are invited, and somebody from the borough, i.e. yourself or Andrew's successor, when it's appointed, come along and do a presentation to them?
More than open to do that, Councillor, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Good idea.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Holmes, Elaine.
Muted. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I note on page 24, other non-statutory agencies who are involved. I was going to say this before Rob can't work on this partnership. You've put Melton parish councils. It's not Melton, they are parish councils in their areas. Perhaps you could take the Melton out and put parish councils, please. The bike thing you were talking about, I presume you mean motorbikes, don't you?
Yes.
Do you?
Yes, that's right.
Well, I don't mean motorbikes, I mean racing bikes. I do believe that there will be, we've had several very bad accidents. We had an extremely bad accident. I don't think you can even ride a bike, and that was on my patch on Scorford Road, the top of Scorford Road. I don't know what we're going to do about it, but I can see that they are starting again. Never, ever do I want to stop people enjoying themselves or doing sport or whatever, but they are incredibly dangerous through villages. They don't go in single file or in pairs. They were going up the Waltham Road the other day. There were 2 horse riders there, and they were going in 4s, and they were going right up to the back of them. I don't know what we can do about it, but I think it's now we ought to be looking at it. I mean, we've had somebody, as I say, it was on the Scorford Road, down just on the Holwell Lane, actually. It was very, very badly injured. He's totally his own fault. He just came straight out into the road into a van, got his head down, and you know, it was terrible. Another one, not in our our area, but in Oakham, or very near Oakham, there was somebody. There were 4 going along at a time. There were a lot of them. This girl touched somebody else's bike in front, shot over, and unfortunately was decapitated by something coming in the opposite direction. This is really, really serious. And so it's not just motorbikes, it's definitely cycles. Just up from me, I was going out probably about 18 months ago, and there were ambulances and things everywhere, and there were cycles everywhere, and somebody had been hurt. Anyway, I turned round and went a different way. Only a fortnight later, in the same place, there were 4 or 5 wide, these bikes. And, you know, I don't have a problem with people, as I have said, but if people could go slower through villages and be mindful of where they're going in 2s or 1s, and I think the Borough Council could actually put signs up or do something, because I just think it is incredibly dangerous. And so I am talking about really racing bikes, or not. We have a bit of problem, but we don't have motorbikes. We don't have much of a problem with, because they know what they're doing. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elaine. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a very pertinent point, and certainly there's been a big increase recently of cyclists on roads from even before lockdown. But certainly since with the reduction in cars over the last year, there's been a subsequent increase in the number of cyclists on the road as well. And I think that's it's about improving communication, understanding the cyclists themselves, understanding the issues, the safety implications of what they're doing, but that has to be balanced against the positives of people getting out and exercising readily. So it's absolutely something that we can look at. We honestly don't receive a huge amount of demand or issues into us as a collective regarding this, but we can absolutely look into that, Councillor.
If I can say, if you asked parish councils, they would actually tell you how difficult it is through villages. Really, really difficult. And it's not that anybody wants to stop people's leisure or fitness. It's just if they would actually go slower through villages, and if they were either be cyclists in single file or at least in pairs where it was safe. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you for that. Yeah, Councillor Fisher.
It's just one observation, really. But over the last year with COVID and the pandemic, the online fraud has increased massively. They're trying to scam people all the time. Would this come under the other crimes in the presentation slides data that we've got? Where would that information be found?
It would predominantly be under the other crimes. I think that's something probably for Inspector Danvers to clarify fully into where that would be categorised, Councillor.
Okay.
We can certainly get through to that into the presentation if you like.
Okay, thank you, Albert.
Any more comments or questions? in which case, may I make a comment? A question really. One of our priorities is identify and protect the most vulnerable, and yet we don't seem to sort of be in touch with, or they're not a partner, Age UK and Vista and other charities that particularly deal, with disability. I don't know whether we actually sort of actively go looking for them, because that they are extremely vulnerable and sometimes disabled. They're almost sort of, they're part of hate crime as well, aren't they? Well, they can be.
Yeah, I think that's right, and certainly over the last year, there has been a general increase in the targeting of those of older people, certainly from a cybercrime and fraud related activity basis. So I know Age UK are certainly engaged with the People Board, which is effectively a partner board of the Community Safety Partnership, and certainly if issues are raised at each of these boards, we have the ability to be able to move from one to the other in terms of demand. So they are linked in, not necessarily directly with the group, but certainly if there are prevailing issues that are causing ongoing problems, then we can certainly address those. But that's not a bad shout about them being far more linked in with the parish council, with the partnership themselves.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Any more questions, comments? Of course, this document has been through Cabinet, as was said earlier, and so our comments and feedback, I've no doubt, will be welcome, and it will go to full council.
The only other thing, Chair, it's Robert Child. The County Council have taken some action on in my patch by putting up the 50-mile sign limits. So the road, the speed limit is reduced from 60 to 50.
Oh, that's something, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. So now we go on to agenda item 5, and again we'll now welcome Inspector Danvers, who's on the phone, I gather.
Yes, good evening to you all. Hopefully I'm coming through clearly.
Was that Audrey, was it? Was she speaking?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Hopefully.
Well,
can you hear me at all?
I can. It's breaking up a bit, but you're very, very welcome. And yeah, of course, we haven't got Alan, so I think we haven't got Councillor Pearson, have we yet? So we had thought we might be here.
No, we haven't been able to reach Councillor Cumbers, unfortunately.
Yeah, so Mr. Cotton, Andrew, you'll say a few words, will you, to introduce this?
I'm happy to do so, Councillor Cumbers. I've been warming up on the touchline for the past few minutes, ready to go on the pitch. If we're happy to proceed, I don't know, Councillor Cumbers, if you like the slide shared, or I know they were circulated in the pack, whatever suits really. Happy to take your steer on that.
I think members like to see them on the screen, if that's okay.
Yep.
Yeah, they're nodding and sticking up thumbs, so yes.
Yes, so I don't know if my colleagues in Democratic Services could have a look at, Albert's, that's great. Okay, thank you. Yes, so this is the first slide, really getting straight into it. And of course, you don't need...
Sorry, Andrew, can I just say, and unless your question is related to a clarification, can you please keep your questions till the presentation is finished? Hope that's okay. Sorry to interrupt, Andrew.
No problem, Councillor Cumbers. Thanks for that. Much appreciated during the presentation. So, yes, you clearly, Alan Pearson, Councillor Pearson, was intending to present a portfolio holder overview to Scrutiny tonight, and naturally on his behalf, for my apologies. Clearly, you don't need to speak to Councillor Pearson long to understand his enthusiasm for community safety and the partnership work and the engagement with the community, and I think that's reflected in the slide that he prepared in advance. So I'll just talk around some of the key points there, whilst trying to steer away from the previous agenda item or stealing the thunder of of Albert or Inspector Danvers that are coming afterwards. So we are looking back over the previous 12 months. And clearly, as we've touched on already in the committee meeting this evening, you know, that's detailed heavily with COVID-19 and the impact of COVID-19. And we heard in particular a question from Councillor Wilkinson about the impact there. So I do think that some of the information tonight will really complement the work that Scrutiny has been doing with the task and finish groups, because clearly antisocial behaviour and the impact on communities has been a big part of that. In addition, of course, to the previous 12 months, happened to coincide with me starting in post, so that's quite a nice timescale for me to comment on. And arriving at Melton, I felt that there was clearly the community safety partnership. I think that we'd characterise that as being a mature community safety partnership. I think there's really good relationships between the agencies that take part. Partners are engaged. There's a real good spirit in the meetings. And a really good quality level of discussion. And again, that's the word I would use to describe it, that mature community safety partnership. And I think that's allowed the development of the strategy that's been put forward for committee's consideration this evening, in terms of it being a mature partnership, able to look not only at sort of functional transactional stuff, but some of those big ticket items, if I put it like that. And that maturity is also seen in the stakeholder workshops and the public consultation, not only in the sort of survey-based format, which is really valuable, but also in that narrative-based format that Councillor Pearson is such an advocate for, and Albert's described really eloquently earlier on. And that's moving away, of course, from that simple sort of mechanistic idea that you tell us a problem, and as a council we'll just use one of our powers and we'll fix it. But it's moving to more that sort of those conversations, those understanding root causes, and really taking advantage of the community safety partnership as an influencer, and the council's role as a place shaper to be able to help people and be able to influence partnerships and partner agencies and how they work, and then bring that forward in terms of empowering the communities. Of course, naturally, the last 12 months has focused for the community safety partnership very much on local issues. It's a borough-based community safety partnership, but we do operate within a national context, and the information that Albert and Inspector Danvers will provide in a few minutes really gives that sort of local flavour. But we know nationally the sort of changing picture through COVID in relation to antisocial behaviour and disorder, almost unique situation in terms of the lockdowns that we've had and then the easing of lockdowns. But particularly, I think what we've seen is that rise in reporting of domestic abuse. And of course, as a council, we've adopted a domestic abuse policy in January that Scrutiny gave a very helpful comment on. So tied with that, we're seeing a perpetrator scheme, which is very much, I think, on its early stages in terms of understanding the efficacy of schemes like that. But it's really good for the partnership to be able to take part in that on a Melton basis, and to work with perpetrators to try and almost fix the root cause of domestic abuse, because of course without perpetrators you don't have victims. I think in terms of the overall approach, it is around those listening and working with communities. It's about the priority neighbourhoods that we've already heard a little bit about this evening, and it's about that joined up working. I think it's very clear to see the council's commitments within those communities. Albert has mentioned the recruitment of a neighbourhood support officer to boost the community safety team, and that's really not about us as a council using our powers, and arming ourselves with the big stick, but it's about us engaging. It's about those officers being present in the community, speaking to vulnerable people, understanding their concerns, and working with partners to be able to address them. We do have an ongoing commitment to preventative work. Already mentioned the perpetrator scheme, but we can see that in some of the examples that Albert in particular will talk about in a few minutes. So I'd like just at that point to hand over to the next slide, which is to talk about the Safer Melton Partnership. I think at this point, Albert, that was your call.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I think much of the content of this slide has been covered in the previous discussion, actually, just around the broader partnership that's in place as part of the Safer Melton Partnership and the Community Safety Partnership, and just setting out the basis for which the partnership operates as well, and the Crime and Disorder Act, and setting out those statutory partners. But the partnership itself goes far wider than that. If there are individual issues that are impacting on our communities, then we will pull on the right people at the right time to be able to inform us effectively of that, of these issues, and how best to address them. We have a number of commissioned services, Turning Point, UAVA, specifically regarding drug misuse and domestic abuse, who are engaged with the partnership on a day-to-day basis, and report in and actually take referrals from agencies within the partnership as well. Alongside that, and building on Councillor's comments earlier, that we're absolutely engaging with individual community groups and individuals within those communities, influential individuals within communities, to be able to find out who is really what the real issues are, and to address those as a broader partnership as well. And again, just I don't know, it's a bit of a duplication on the previous agenda item, so apologies for that. But just a broad overview of the strategic plan there. I don't think there's anything new in there that I haven't already covered. But yeah, more than happy to discuss that further later on. So as Andrew said, the activities of the partnership aren't just based on local issues. Obviously, that's the main focus, but that's got to be taken in the context of wider demands, national trends and drivers that are pushing this agenda forward. Inevitably, in the current climate, COVID is absolutely at the forefront of what we're doing, and the impacts that lockdown and the associated impacts of COVID is having on our communities as well. Not least in terms of the changing profile of crime, which we will get into, but we've seen reductions in things like acquisitive crime and burglary, shoplifting, for fairly obvious reasons. But from a community safety perspective, that impacts on, as Councillor Wilkinson highlighted, on people's health and well-being is something that needs to be understood. And I think that's going to be a long-term thing that we look at, in order to be able to provide the right support there. The issue of county lines and obviously the drug-related and vulnerability-related crime isn't going away. In fact, it's certainly we're seeing more and more cases now regarding county lines and the exploitation of vulnerable people within our communities and across the country, really. That's becoming a far more prevalent issue, alongside knife crime as well, which we've go into slightly later. But we're engaged with the Violence Reduction Network to be able to address that from at a real preventative stage. We have child exploitation, and which is certainly a growing picture and an ever-present picture on a national scale at the moment. Cybercrime and fraud, certainly the way people are spending more of their life online these days, is having an impact on the type of and the profile of crime that's associated with that. We're seeing more more online bullying. We're seeing more online hate crime, and obviously, as Councillor Fisher referred to, we're seeing more fraud cases as well, and the targeting of vulnerable people within our community. Alongside that, we've had thankfully fairly sporadic issues regarding these in recent years in Melton, but modern slavery and human trafficking is certainly a very high profile and extremely damaging crime type as and when it happens. So everything that we discussed today is under that national picture, and we've tried to, through the strategy, we've tried to marry up the real local intelligence and knowledge we have with that national and emerging trend picture as well. So if we just get into the broad crime statistics, what I've done on this and subsequent slides is do a bit of a comparison between 2019 2020 for a number of key crime types. As I said in the last slide, I think the real reductions have been around the acquisitive crime, so robbery, certainly shoplifting, vehicle crime. Fewer vehicles left in car parks, for example, over the last 12 months that have left that have shown a real decrease in that type of crime. But we have seen a significant increase in other types, predominantly around violence, sexual offences, which includes domestic abuse, and as Andrew said, there has been an increase in that across the board, with people spending more time in their houses with their families. But we have certainly seen a large increase across the borough and also across the country and county of violence and sexual offences, certainly within the household. Drugs, that's the really high level increase there. I think that's a reflection on potentially how underreported it has been in previous years. I think 53 instances in the whole of 2019 wasn't necessarily a good reflection on the overall picture. I think the fact that we now have far better intelligence regarding drugs networks, it's far easier for the community through our intelligence, the police and intelligence portal, to be able to report issues on a day-to-day basis, and also targeted work from the police has really put this at the detection and reporting of these drug usage and drug related crime has increased significantly. So at this point, I'll hand over to Inspector Danvers for any comment on that slide.
Yes, certainly. Good evening to you all. And certainly in relation to the drugs, really just to echo what Albert says, I think a lot of the increase is down to increased police enforcement. Obviously, the increase was approximately 100. Because of this new target operating model that we've got, our resources are a lot more localised, and their local knowledge is a lot more elevated than I think it would have been sort of 12, 18 months ago. That's enabled us to know where the key hotspots are in terms of where the drug misuse is likely to be, and also who the likely drug misusers and the drug dealers, again, are likely to be. I've looked at the amount of stop and searches that our officers have conducted in Melton over the last sort of 12 months, and there's over 350, nearly 400 in fact, stop and searches, and a lot of those, approximately about a third of those, will result in something being found, either a weapon or drugs or something of that ilk. So again, quite naturally, when the officers do find something, they create a crime report, and it might be, for example, for the possession of drugs, and that would obviously feed into the elevated numbers that we've got. In terms of what we're doing, because of the localised resources that I've got a dedicated neighbourhood policing team, and to complement that, I've got a dedicated neighbourhood intelligence officer. As well as that, I've obviously got a team of a number of officers as well on 10 different shifts. A lot of local knowledge is passed around, so the officers know who to be targeting. And what we have been doing, in addition to the P1s, is undertaking a number of warrants and a number of key addresses. really in consultation and in good partnership with the council. We've been issuing what we call Section 8 notices as well to people, letting them basically know that if we do, of course, attend the address on subsequent occasions, and we do think that there were drug dealing issues there that might jeopardise their tenancy. Regarding safeguarding, again, the officers are really alive to that. When I joined sort of 24 years ago, if I'm honest, I don't think safeguarding was at the forefront of policing. I can definitely say now that it definitely is. So officers and quite naturally partner agencies are a lot more alive to the signs of exploitation of youngsters, and also as well of vulnerable adults as well. So we are far more keyed up on the things to look for, and the support that we get from Force in terms of partnership meetings and CSE meetings means that where we do identify vulnerability, the support is available not just at local MPA level but also at Force level as well. So for drugs, we know the numbers have gone up, but again, I think when you contextualise it, to me it's actually strangely a positive thing that it's going up, because it means that we can help those who are being exploited by the drug dealers, and it also means that we can hold the drug dealers to account. Just in relation to some of the other offences as well, I think Albert's rightly touched on the violence and sexual offences which have gone up. That is very much in line with a national upward incline, and also a Force-side upward incline as well. Part of the increase is potentially due to a change in crime types, particularly for stalking and harassment, which changed, I think it was in March or April last year. And also, as well, the nature of society, unfortunately, potentially means that there potentially is more violent crimes as well. But again, that is something that we are alive to. And again, I think Albert's alluded to the work of the Violence Reduction Network. There are always going to be challenges around how we manage violence. From some profiling that I did by going through crime reports, it's quite strange because obviously we've been in lockdown for pretty much for a year, and previously our violent crime may have been associated with the nighttime economy, and that was perhaps always a natural assumption that people Friday and Saturday nights fights, etc. But obviously that hasn't happened over the last 12 months. So certainly from what I've looked at, certainly some of the violent crime appears to be people inside groups of people, a bit of a spat between a group of friends, one hits the other, and also as well sometimes outside of the park. So there isn't necessarily the clearly defined patterns to the violence crime offending that there perhaps is to some other crimes. To some other crime types. I think the only thing which has perhaps been identified is there might be a slight uplift in, I think, is it schools just after kicking out time. But again, it's something which we're alive to, the uplift in violence crime. It's something which, once we do identify any patterns, if any do arise, we'll definitely making sure that we deploy the relevant resources to it. In relation to obviously the downward trend in other crime types, Albert's rightly alluded to the potential impacts of lockdown. Obviously, that one of the most notable crime types that has really also gone down is shoplifting alongside burglaries and theft. But I have to say that burglaries and theft from and of motor vehicles were on a downward trajectory pre-lockdown. So I'm hoping that that would have continued despite lockdown, but I think Albert's right to say that it has probably accelerated the downward trend, the impact of lockdown. So that's very much all I have to say in relation to the current crime statistics. I know that I've been asked to answer questions at the end. Albert, anything else for yourself at all in relation to?
No. I think if I just go back to a couple of slides that I've tried to move the slides on, Audrey. I know you can't see the screen, but tried to move the slides on as you were talking. So if I just quickly give an overview of the ones that I skipped past. Okay. Obviously the slide that we're on at the moment, the crime type just gives an impression of the difference between in numbers of incidents that we're dealing with. So just in relation to the drugs element, obviously we although we've seen a significant increase in the way that's reported, it's a significantly less prevalent crime type than the violence and sexual offences, which is obviously the key element here. I think it must be stressed as well that in comparison with nationally, we do have low crime numbers. We're not talking about increases here that take us way above where typical areas such as ourselves with the similar demographics are. We're not massive outliers in that sense, and a lot of the increases and changes that we've seen over the last 12 months are pretty reflective of that. Not downplaying at all the instances that have happened. Certainly any crime to happen to anyone at any time is something that we wish to avoid as much as possible. But comparatively, we are still in a fairly low crime area. Just around violent crimes, to add to what Inspector Danvers was saying. Obviously, there's been an increase in domestic violence around that, which actually led to knock-on impacts that certainly from a housing perspective. I also manage homelessness, and we've seen an increase in the number of domestic abuse victims presenting to us in search of housing at the point at which they're fleeing that domestic abuse as well. And as Andrew had alluded to earlier, we have signed up to, we are contributing into and able to refer into a domestic violence perpetrator scheme as well, which seeks to engage differently with known perpetrators of domestic abuse, and where appropriate and safe to do so with the victims of such abuse as well, in order to be able to enact real change there as well. So we have the ability to be able to refer as statutory agencies into the scheme. It will be delivered in Melton. People aren't going to have to travel for this. The engagement will be taken to them, as opposed to people having to sort of making it hard for people to engage to an extent. So we're, as Andrew said, we are looking to really build on that over the coming 12 months and make as many referrals into it as we possibly can. It's a county-wide scheme that is as a result of some funding that the OPCC, Office for the Police Crime Commissioner, had facilitated, but we as a partnership are funding it, partially funding it too. I think Inspector Danvers covered drugs off fairly well. We have, I mean, even the profile over the last 12 months has seen a significant flux in the monthly numbers of drug-related crime, and I think that will reflect broadly the interventions that the police have made, alongside the largest spike there, 30 instances in May. May well have been as a result of things like heightened reporting of issues, because people were in the midst of lockdown. If they could smell drugs from next door, then they're more likely to report it. It's that type of activity that is quite contextual to a point where we need to do a deeper dive into the numbers to really understand it. But I think it just shows the broad range of incidents that we're dealing with on a month-to-month basis. And also the new tenancy agreement allowed us far greater powers to be able to take action against certainly our own tenants who are found to be using drugs within the household or committing drug-related crime as well. So that will certainly help us action this alongside the police going forward. But that communication between housing, community safety here at the council, and the police and other agencies is absolutely vital on this. Just also building on what Inspector Danvers was saying around acquisitive crime broadly in line with lockdown to a certain extent. Certainly from the case of shoplifting, we saw that January and March last year were the highest prevalence of shoplifting incidents, and then they very much lowered and evened out over the remaining 12 months. We've seen that continue into this financial year as well, and broadly the same with vehicle crime as well, although that's obviously increased slightly towards the back end of the year. Burglary very similar as well. Certainly that initial lockdown, that main lockdown one that we had in April to June, July last year has saw a significant reduction, purely because people were in the house far more, and it's less likely that you'll be burgled if you're in the property. But we've seen a 15% reduction year on year, and obviously there's been increased liaison and activity, certainly by police and agencies, regarding high visibility presence in areas. You'll have noticed recently, if you follow the local police force on social media, PCSOs have been posting quite regularly on visits they've been undertaking in rural locations, certainly regarding antisocial behaviour, burglary, and rural crime as well. And I think that all has a cumulative impact on reducing instances anyway. So as we spoke about earlier, we are also engaged with the Violence Reduction Network, which comes to all our meetings and is undertaking some really strong work certainly with under 25s to identify those people who have been found in possession of weapons or have undertaken violent crime in the past, and to be able to engage with them, understand the cause behind that. Is it gang related? Is it peer group related? Is it because of something happening in their life that they can't control? And to engage with people on a different level to how historically we've tried to address these issues. We've been going into schools, and with the Violence Reduction Network and our own community safety officers have been going into schools to understand more from the school's perspective of what issues they're facing, but also to engage with pupils and to speak to them about the dangers of carrying knife and undertaking violent crime as well. But it's very much from the perspective of prevention rather than reactionary addressing of these issues as well. So just on to a couple of things. Obviously, the violence perpetrator scheme I've already gone into in some length with the domestic violence, the violent crime slide. But another thing that we're looking to do currently with the OPCC is to access the MHCLG's Safer Streets Fund. That's specifically regarding acquisitive crime, and the OPCC has identified through a data analysis an area of the town centre at Melton, or the town centre at Melton, that would really benefit from some inward investment on this basis as well. So we're looking at specifically around robbery, shoplifting, that acquisitory crime. That's, although we've seen a decrease in the past 12 months, there have still been a significant number of issues in previous years. So that's on two levels that we're looking to access that fund, both from an assets improvement basis, so use of CCTV, ANPR cameras, target hardening, so looking at alleyways, lighting and gates of known escape routes, for example, and also environmental impacts as well. So it's very much the broken window effect of trying to address those sort of environmental issues in order to be able to make it less likely that people will undertake these crime activities going forward. So that's, on one hand, that sort of amelioration of the asset and of the building, but also to work with known perpetrators to change behaviours and reduce crime rates as well. So it's something that the team is very much engaged with alongside the OPCC at the moment. We have a meeting tomorrow to go into it in more detail, because the closing date for bids on that is the 25th of March. And we're very, very much wanting to put a bid in. The police have already this week, I understand, undertaking an environmental audit of the town centre, predominantly around Bentley Street flats, Rutland Street, in order to be able to make a real a proper assessment of what work would be a benefit there as well. One of the key areas of work over the last 12 months has been around the nighttime economy. It was back in May last year when MHCLG and the cabinet holder for communities identified that the reopening of nighttime economy and associated activities should be owned by by community safety partnerships across the country. And on that basis, we delivered a self and welcoming, hopefully people found it welcoming, reopening of the nighttime economy in July of last year as well. So that was very much a broad effort from both ourselves, the council, and community safety, environmental health specifically, but also around our planning colleagues and licensing colleagues, in order to be able to facilitate greater outdoor seating and better accommodation of visitors who couldn't go into or be prevented from going into each individual establishment as well. But also with the police, and we were doing joint patrols. We had COVID ambassadors out on at the weekends, liaising closely with the police and people in the CCTV rooms as well, to be able to monitor that impact. We have ongoing weekly community safety sit reps, chaired by the chief executive of the OPCC, to plan now for the reopening, the future reopening of pubs and the nighttime economy in future. And obviously we're continuing to assess the use of COVID ambassadors, with funding that's some funding that came from MHCLG, but also departmental resources to be able to have an ongoing high visibility presence in those areas as well. Obviously, we're using the CCTV, which is very much a collaborative effort between ourselves, the police, and volunteers. We've taken on a number of new volunteers over the last few months to be able to manage that more effectively as well. And obviously we also monitor Rutland's CCTV as well through the Melton police station site. A lot of work has also been done liaising with the Melton bids and businesses within those within the town centre, and also across the borough, regarding their responsibilities to their customers, and guidance and advice on formal guidance that comes from government regarding restrictions and what they're allowed to do. Obviously, we're so that's going to step up at pace. And we're also looking at the recovery, not just the recovery, but also the future of the nighttime economy as well, and what we as an authority and as an area want to see from our nighttime economy going forward. So that's all feeding in through the CSP at the moment. So I think this is again, I think we've covered most of the sort of partnership work recently. Certainly, these are the main sort of partnerships that we have in place through the community safety partnership. Reference there to the people board as well, and Job Centre Plus, who are very much linked into as an authority, but also the community safety partnership. And we'll deal with a wide range of cases. with housing colleagues and wider as well to be able to improve community safety in the area. And this just goes into antisocial behaviour, the different types of antisocial behaviour that we normally address. This has been impacted slightly over the last 12 months as we've had more of a as a council, we've had more of an impact regarding patrolling for looking at COVID lockdown breaches, etc. We are doing quite a lot of joint work with the police. And our housing colleagues have recently undertaken a bit of joint working with the police regarding a closure order on a property which had significant number of COVID related breaches, but also drug activity as well. So that's a really good example of the type of enforcement action that we can take as a collective in order to address issues that are really impacting on the community. And then finally, and so that feeds into, I think, everything that we've discussed today is around the priority neighbourhoods. We've recently taken on a new neighbourhood support officer, Nicole Wright, who joined us in January, whose role will be to really take both the CSP strategy and also our local neighbourhood plans, which she's developing at the moment, into an operational basis for service delivery, using local assets, using community centres, and really gaining a knowledge base of what the issues are and who the potential perpetrators and victims are within each of those areas. Obviously, looking at co-located work with agencies across the CSP as part of that, and taking a holistic approach to problem solving and community engagement as well. So we're looking to facilitate that change as opposed to forcing our views or change on communities. And so the next steps, what will the next year hold for us? Obviously, we will hopefully have the formal CSP strategy approval in March. So later on this month. We will, on the back of that, produce the annual action plan in line with the objectives set out in the strategy as well, and that will go hand in hand with the neighbourhood plans and engagement predominantly following the lifting of lockdown, but that engagement work is already underway as we speak now. Obviously, a key element for the next 6 months will be management of the nighttime economy and reopening of the nighttime economy. And we'll be working with the Violence Reduction Network and other agencies to be able to make a lasting change, certainly regarding violent crime as well. And obviously, we want to be seen to provide a really strong response to crime and social behaviour. This isn't about, but when we talk about a holistic approach, we don't want to be seen as though we are taking a light touch to addressing these things. We will absolutely, as a partnership, enforce where we need to enforce, and we won't think twice around that. But there's a time for enforcement. There's a time for really understanding and doing that preventative work as well. And then obviously the policing models that have been referenced there, and maybe Audrey would like to come in just to discuss. Obviously, I think there's been a change with the number of police officers working out of the Melton police station, and over to you, Audrey, just to go through that recently.
Yeah, again, as things you mentioned there, certainly the policing model has made a difference in terms of the amount of resources that are available, and also the distance which the resources have to travel, which actually means that our response times have actually decreased from where they were, say, this time 12 months ago. Previously, officers potentially would have had to come from somewhere as far afield as the Saffron Lane estate or the Ayers Monsell. Now, if there is a report of a burglary or theft in progress in Melton or Rutland, officers will be responding somewhere from a much more localised area rather than somewhere far distant. So certainly the model is paying off in that respect. As well, crime investigations, officers are managing those very well, making sure that we keep the victims updated, victim satisfaction, again, because of that local knowledge that the officers have got, and the reduction of officers' crime queues. If people are unfortunately victims of crime, we're able to probably give them a better level of service, I think, than they were able to get 12 months ago. We are, again, alongside this policing model, really trying to encourage the public to sign up to something called Neighbourhood Link, which is another way in which we can keep them informed of what we're doing, not just at a neighbourhood level, but also at a policing sort of proactive level, and letting them know what is happening in their local neighbourhood, because I think communication is absolutely key. I think people need to not just feel the benefits of this new model, but also hear about the benefits as well. So certainly, I'm really pleased for what I've seen over the last 12 months with the ability of this new model to actually make sure that we do improve the service we give to the local communities.
Thank you, Audrey. And that's it. Sorry if you went slightly over the expected time there, but hopefully that's given you a good overview of the activities of the CSP. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was an excellent presentation. My goodness me, you must be worn out, all of you. But no, that was really comprehensive, and we're now open to comments and feedback and questions. I can see some hands up, Jacob.
Thank you, Chair. I knew drugs was a problem in town, but I didn't realise, 188% increase is quite shocking actually when you see it there on the page. I just kind of wanted to, how does this compare with other places, other towns like Loughborough and Market Harborough, similar sized market towns across the county? Kind of what action has been taken to seriously tackle this? Is it due to lockdown? Is it kids don't have much to do, so they're going to, getting involved with the wrong people and things like that in town? Kind of how are we going to get on top of this? Because it has been an issue previously in Melton, and I kind of don't want it to get to a situation where it's becoming a big issue again, and it already is a big issue. And then another question I had, if that's okay, just about the public order that's listed on there and the increase. Does this include non-compliance with the COVID regulations, and have the police been taking a balanced approach to this? Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Councillor. I think if I sort of take the first element of that and then pass over to Inspector Danvers, if that's okay. I agree. The headline figures around the increase, the year-on-year increase, is stark, and that's something that we're aware of, and we're certainly not hiding from. I think, as I said in the presentation, this is a reflection of the really what I see as sort of an under-reporting of drug-related offences in previous years, and I think the action that predominantly the police on this have been doing in terms of being really proactive and undertaking stop and searches, undertaking additional, being far more responsive when offences are called in, but also the joint work that we as a borough council have done with those policing agencies, certainly from a tenancy management and community safety perspective, on sharing intelligence around this. We have housing officers now going into properties, sensing drugs there, and immediately having that discussion with the police and agencies that I don't think particularly was happening previously, predominantly because we didn't really have housing officers to be able to undertake that work. I think so. I think the increase has very much been seen as a result of increased action, because we are absolutely aware, as you touched on earlier on with your questioning around Fairmead, we are aware that this has been an issue, but probably underreported previously. Now we're getting it back to a position where things are being reported, but also we are directly impacting on that as well. So if I let Audrey come in on that and the wider disorder question as well.
Yeah, just to add to what Albert said, just in relation to the drugs, I think the questioner also asked, I think Jacob, you also asked about other market towns such as Market Harborough, etc. Yeah. I'm certainly aware that they do have issues with drugs, and I'm aware that also Harborough, Charnwood, Northwest, which is a Colville area, they have issues with drugs and with county lines as well. So I don't think Melton is an outlier in that respect. And I think, as we've touched upon already, I think the increase is largely, I think, down to increased policing activity, because we've got the resource and we've got the focus, but also in response to community concerns as well. As I mentioned before, there's something which we call Neighbourhood Link, which we're trying to encourage as many people as possible to sign up to. That enables us to survey members of the community as to what their concerns are. And I think for 4 out of the 5 Melton beats, one of the concerns listed, one of the top 3 priorities listed, is drugs, either taking or using. So again, that's given us added impetus and added focus to actually make sure that we continue with the drive that we started in relation to tackling drug-related issues. And just in relation to the Fairmead, that is something which we've continuously focused on. At the back end of January, on Friday and Saturday, with a targeted operation, we did over 20 stop and searches just in those 2 days. So again, when people recognise the policing activity, and as Albert's alluded to earlier, they're then more inclined to phone us to complain about the drugs. And we've now got the resources where we can deploy resources as well to respond to incidents or reports of people saying they are taking drugs. So it is, as Albert said, very much perversely a good thing. And I really just want to stress as well that it's not solely just about enforcement. That for those who are misusing, we get that some of those actually, they want to move on and they want to change their lifestyle. So there is support in place, there is referrals made to various support services, various support agencies for those who want to move away from a drug-fueled lifestyle. For those who won't change for whatever reasons, then there's naturally we'll continue with the enforcement angle. Does that hopefully add some further context and some reassurance around the uplift in the figures? They perversely represent a good thing, because I think, as we've always said, I think we always knew that it was out there, but we didn't perhaps begin to turn over a few stones, and I think that's what's been happening now, and we've began to tackle and to address the issues.
Yeah, like I say, you kind of I've known for a while that it has been a problem, but kind of when you see that kind of increase, you know, on black and white paper, it kind of is quite staggering to kind of get a numerical representation of it.
Yeah, and hopefully it's sending out the message to the community as well that we're not going to tolerate people misusing drugs and the damage it causes, not only to the drug misusers' lives themselves, but also to those around them as well.
Are you okay with that, Jacob?
Yeah, and then there's just a bit about public order, and you know, does this include non-compliance with the COVID regulations, and have the police in Melton taken a more balanced approach to this? That's probably something
we absolutely have a public order. It doesn't include COVID. In fact, technically, the COVID breaches are not crimed, and that they won't impact upon crime figures as such. They have a different code. So the public order is something different. It can be somebody effing and blinding in the streets. And again, I stress, yes, it may well be an increase in the actual occurrences, but also as well, I think that we've recorded probably more meticulously than we have in the past. So if somebody phones in and somebody says someone shouting and yelping and effing and blinding on the park, if officers attend and they don't see or hear anybody, officers perhaps would have previously said, well, bear research, no trace, we can't validate that's happened. We have what we call dedicated decision makers who are based at force, who would read the incident and say, actually, well, somebody said they could hear some shouting, some effing and blinding, so they would crime that public order offence. That has been increasingly happening because some years ago we criticised, in line with a number of other forces, for not always meticulous recording things. And I think Greater Manchester have become subject to that, unfortunately, I think recently, for an elevated amount of crimes that they weren't recording. So we are now really quite meticulous about the way that we do record things. So the uplift in public order perhaps is in part due to that. But again, it potentially also is in part to people potentially shouting and yelping a little bit more in the streets. But it doesn't include the COVID tickets. In relation to the COVID enforcement, we follow the 4 E's. We engage, we explain, we encourage, and then, and only then, do we enforce. that has obviously progressed as the lockdown has progressed and other people perhaps, shall we say, transgressed a little bit more. So we're still following the 4Es, and that enables us to take a balanced and a more nuanced approach to issuing tickets. I think this lockdown, we've obviously issued, I think, more tickets than we've issued in the previous lockdown, because there's been a greater focus on making sure that people do comply with it than perhaps there has been in the past. And I think we've previously liked to encourage people and maybe give them the chance, but I think increasingly people are aware of what the regulations and what the rules are. So because of that, we've moved through the 4Es through the 3Es to the 4Es, i.e. the enforcement stage, an awful lot quicker. So we are enforcing, we are still taking a balanced and proportionate approach, and the tickets don't form part of the public order statistics.
That's great.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We've got Councillor Fisher, then Councillor Brown, then Councillor Holmes. So we start off with Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to say thank you for the presentation. It was really interesting. Secondly, my question is to Inspector Danvers. With the National Driving Police recruitment, are we potentially going to see an increase in the police officers working in Melton to tackle some of our local issues, or have we already had an increase in officers?
We're constantly getting an increase in officers. I have the nice headache of getting more and more space to accommodate the officers. I've got an additional 5 officers starting next month. It's pretty much continuous. Boris has said nationally we're getting extra 20,000 officers, and obviously Leicestershire is getting its share, and we are definitely getting our share as well. I notice it. I've got challenges for space. I've got challenges for getting the officers more vehicles, etc. They are fantastic challenges to have because I want the extra resources. But I can assure you that we are definitely getting more resources. I can definitely assure you that.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Brown, Ronan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, funny how, isn't it, how things go round in circles. I remember coming to Melton about 20 years ago, and Audrey, you probably remember the big recruitment drives of putting neighbourhood teams and big teams on the streets and all the work that we did in those years. And then austerity's obviously seen that decline in all sorts of public resources, etc., which unfortunately have probably been culminated with what we're experiencing now and some of the risks, etc. But where I'm coming from is that we talk about drugs, demand drives supply. That's the first thing. What drives demand? Poverty, poor education, lack of housing, lack of aspiration, etc. And local government's been absolutely devastated, as has a lot of other public services. Hopefully some of that's coming back now, certainly through the police and certainly the NHS. Leicester Police do a fantastic job. I see the work that they do across the county. I also see some of the work a lot of other forces do, which is if you're going to depend on an organisation to respond, the police are usually the only one that you'll definitely get there if you need them. But it's what are we doing as a partnership to look at, the risks of and not just drugs, but other things. Acquisitive crime will be driven usually by drugs or by a need for money, etc. And what are we doing within schools to tackle those young people who are more disaffected? I know we've obviously got the learning hub, and we'll have pupil referral units, etc. And then we obviously have the adolescents, and then the young usually male adults, the majority of coming out. What are we doing to try and educate people to stop getting into crime and being a nuisance to our community? And then following that is what sort of links, how is probation working with us, and what sort of impact is probation having upon those who are offending and repeat offenders, and how are we trying to turn them around, etc. And finally, is it still the case, and I imagine it is, because this is usually the case across the country, is that there's a small cohort of people, probably maybe 20 to 30 individuals, that cause most of the acquisitive crime and crime from drug use in Melton, And if that's the case, how effective are we currently, or do we need to be lobbying for more resources to help the partnership out? And that's a genuine question. This is more about how we can really understand the issues to try and lobby to get the resources into the right area.
If I take on to that first, if that's okay, Councillor. Certainly from the perspective of a small cohort of people, when I first arrived at Melton, I think that was the pervading assumption was that it was 5, 10, 15 people who are continually doing this. I think we've done some work recently which looked at those individuals, and it didn't necessarily fit that profile. I think it may have done previously, but I think with the recently it's become a wider group of individuals who are undertaking the majority of this work. It's certainly not in the sort of 5, 10, 15, 20 people sort of range. It is something that we're looking to address. Certainly we have. I think over the last 12 months we've engaged with a huge number of people who have been seen previously to be high offenders. Just because through the Everyone In campaign through housing, we've provided them with accommodation a lot of the time, and so we've really worked with our housing teams, and also with our case management teams to engage with those people in a different way to be able to affect longer lasting change, and the impact of that is that a number of those are actually sustaining long-term accommodation now, which is really positive. So I think that sort of fits into your initial point as well around that intervention. We have to absolutely acknowledge that this isn't a transactional relationship between the issue and our response. This has to be a broader holistic look at someone's circumstances and intergenerationally what's happened within their families in order to or their circumstances to put them in this point at this in this situation at this point in time, and I think we as an authority can do that through our housing officers, community safety officers, and also case managers. But more broadly, and there is a commitment which the CSP strategy seeks to address of us as a partnership and every single agency involved in that partnership trying to work with those people on a different way. It's something that we haven't been successful in doing for a long period of time, which is why you're having the drivers, the poverty drivers, the lack of education drivers driving what we're seeing now in terms of crime outcomes, and there's absolutely a commitment on behalf of the partnership to deal with that. In relation to probation are key statutory partners of the partnership. We've had more engagement from the private arm of probation over recent months, and we've certainly had our main sort of liaison with those has been regarding the rehousing of individuals over the last 12 months as they've come out of prison, and we've engaged with them on that basis. I think they are a key stakeholder going forward, and in terms of understanding the cohort of people who are causing issues, they absolutely have to be engaged with this. Audrey, I'm not sure if you have anything more to add on that basis.
No, just I'm not certain. Again, just to echo what you said, I'm very much aware of the partnership field approach, not just by Melton, but also certainly from our force-wide perspective as well. We've got an integrated offender management team who work well with a number of different agencies, housing, mental health, because I'm sure as you're aware, a number of people who misuse drugs have also got mental health challenges, education. So there is an approach taken that recognises that to tackle the drug misusing issue isn't solely enforcement based. Certainly, from my experience and my dealings with our integrated offender management team, probation are very much a key part of that and very much a key contributor as well. So certainly, I think it's running quite well. Locally as well, we have our own local offender management structures as well, where we have a a monthly meeting where we decide who we're going to be focusing on and who we're going to be targeting. And again, a member of the Integrated Offender Management Team is also present at that meeting, and again, they can link in with probation. So it is very much a partnership approach to tackling that the drug misusing issues around the drug misusers.
Thanks. You all right there, Ronan?
Yeah, that sound, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes, Elaine.
Thank you. Really, it's not a question. It's just really, well, it is a question to Audrey. It is a long time since we met up with you, a really long time. In that time, I gave you my telephone number because I'm president of our Young Farmers Club. And over this time, and it has been difficult, we have meetings every week, but they have not always been able to have them. They have actually, they're having one inter-county tonight, and they've done it themselves. Now, not any help from anybody. I mean, some of them, probably 18, 17, some a little bit older, who've actually organised all these things. So I would like you to get in touch with me at some time, because we try and look after everybody in our community. They don't have to be agricultural or anything like that, but they do seem to like to enjoy the camaraderie of our club. But of course, it is helpful if we talk to all the community, like community police, because as we've said before, community crime, where I had some earlier, just before Christmas, somebody stole some things at the bottom of the yard, which is not particularly nice. But not much to steal, but you know, it was obviously in the night that was done. Not worth reporting it to the police because nothing happens anyway, you know, with small things, and I appreciate that. But is it when we talk about young people and drugs and all that sort of thing, would it not be good for the police to really integrate with a lot of these young people, or do you anyway? You know, there's, like Jacob has said, hotspots, and I've known those hotspots for a long time. And by the way, as Pat will tell you as well, we did used to have officers. I know we go backwards, but we did have officers to go into these areas. And then that all seemed to stop, but we did. And Ronan will tell you as well. We did have officers that would go, council officers we're talking about here, that used to go into all these areas. And it's amazing. One-to-ones help like anything. So when you get your more police, are you going to be able to go into local areas and not just in the town, but in the rural areas?
Thanks, Elaine. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We certainly do. I mean, the officers do engage with the young people as part of, particularly the beat officers. Each area has got a local beat officer and a local PCSO at the very least. The officers will engage with the local youth. It's by no means an adversarial relationship. If they can get on with the youth and get on a level with them, then that's what the officers will do. For those who don't want to engage, who choose to still continue to be miscreants, and unfortunately they'll be dealt with for the criminal activities. But the officers would much rather engage with the youth rather than doing anything adversarial to them. You know, and I know she's now moved on. Sharon would, when it was open at the Bottisford Youth Club, you know, she had a lot of engagement there. So it's not a case of us not wanting to engage with the youth. I think all of the officers certainly want to engage with the youth. I think we recognise that they're the adults of tomorrow. They're an invaluable part of any community. So it is certainly something which we have been doing, and certainly it's something which we'll
I didn't say that you didn't want to. I just didn't know whether you have got time to. This is what it's really all about. And if you're going to have more officers, are you going to spend more time within the community with young people, not having to solve crimes? Because if you can get on a one-to-one basis, it's sometimes so much easier to actually talk to young people and get them their ideas. They you know, they don't want. Nobody's born bad, are they? You know.
Mm. I think certainly the officers, again, with this new model, we've definitely pared back what the officers, the beat officers, that is, are expected to do. So they have, you know, including the PCSOs, the capacity to go out and to engage with the youth. That's what I'll be expecting them to be doing. You know, 8 or 9 years ago, PCSOs were routinely carrying crimes on their crime keys. That's not happening anymore. They have the capacity to go out and to engage. It's disappointing. I think from what you're saying, you get the impression that they're not doing that as much as I think you'd like them to be doing, or as much as we have done in the past, and perhaps we've had more beat officers.
I wasn't talking about officers. I was talking officers of the council when we were talking before about engagement with people. We had officers, and I don't mean police officers, we had council officers that used to be able to go into the community. Then, if there was a problem, you then could talk to the police and probably liaise, and these sort of things help, don't they? You know, I think you've got the wrong idea. I'm not getting at anybody. I'm just merely saying how it used to be done. I know you don't always be going backwards, but sometimes it's the only way that that would happen, wouldn't it? My phone will start ringing and I can't find it.
Just on that from the council's perspective, Councillor Holmes, I think there has been a reduction in recent years in the number of officers who have been able to do that sort of outreach and engagement. But it's something that we are adding to, and the latest neighbourhood support officer is a key post in undertaking that. And certainly, if there are significant issues within our community, I would hope that they would be engaging with groups such as young farmers in order to be able to understand that better, if they are being impacted by issues.
Yeah, right. So we can look forward then to our Young Farmers Club having Zoom meetings if that's got to be or not, with our local Bobby or with the Melton Police at some time or other, are we?
I certainly can't see one. After speaking to you last year, I spoke with Sharon Roscoe, so he's now moved on. And certainly engaged.
I know Sharon does. Sharon, yeah, exactly. Because she was a Melton Young Farmer anyway, so. Yeah. Righto then, thank you.
Thank you. I can't see any more hands up, so can I just ask a question? Acceptable behaviour contracts. This takes me back a few years, and I'm sure that Ronan used to deal with those. Do you not, Ronan? A decade or two ago.
I did, and I still do in my existing role. Well, not obviously in the front line, but obviously manage it. Yeah. So they've been around a long time. Since,
and do they work? Yeah, are they working?
2005, I think. They've been around since that. I think Andrew backed me up on that one. I think that's the year.
I'll go 2000. I'll raise you 2006. Respect standard for housing management, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, you're right.
It must be about that era.
There you go, something like that, isn't it?
Yeah. So, are they working in Melton?
I think there's a time and a place for every type of enforcement. But I think. To say whether something's working or not, I think would depend on the circumstances in which it's been deployed and the problem it's trying to address. I think broadly it's certainly a tool that we use as a partnership in order to be able to address certainly antisocial behaviour, but it needs to be used in the right way. And I think with ourselves and police colleagues using these interventions more and more, then we'll be able to judge that. They certainly can be effective, absolutely.
Oh, good. And I read a statistic the other day, something like 70% of boys whose fathers have been in prison will also go to prison. you know, and as this is a sort of generation to generation, like so many things, you know, and there must be, councils and police can't do everything, can they? You know, there are so many problems, but I don't know whether we do anything to help people who come out of prison.
There are schemes that do focus on, particularly if the person has spent an inordinate amount of time in prison. There are schemes which will sort of intensively support prisoners and prisoners' families, or other ex-prisoners and their families, to rehabilitate. And again, I think it's in recognition of the sort of statistics that you just quoted. So there are schemes out there, but from what I understand, they're quite resource intensive, and that potentially sort of limits the availability of the scheme to perhaps all of those who benefit from it.
Yeah, because you're right. I mean, sometimes it's just lack of housing, isn't it? You know, they've got nowhere to live, so they go out and steal. And yeah. Anyway, any more questions? Any more comments? No? Was that Jeannie? No, looks like no more then. Well, thank you so much, Inspector Danvers and Albert Wilson and Andrew Cotton. That was a superb presentation. I hope you're glad with the feedback you've received, and that was really, really very useful. So we have, I think we're coming towards the end of the meeting. Thanks again to the officers led by Natasha, and I can see we've got Helen Ainge here this evening, and doing the usual good job that they always do for us. So thanks everybody. I think that was a very, very interesting meeting, and I shall see you all soon. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Bye.